You're listening to the Modern Mainframe, BMC's intelligent C optimization and transformation podcast, covering the latest trends and issues in the mainframe and how BMC AMI solutions can help you make change your competitive advantage.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Modern Mainframe. I'm Matt Dallaire. Joining me today to discuss DataOps is BMC Principal Product Manager John Barry. Welcome, John. Thanks for taking the time to join us.
Thanks, Matt. Nice to be here.
So our podcast today is a follow-up to a webinar you recently presented, along with BMC's Ron Coleman, entitled Unlocking Business Value with Modern DataOps.
Right. Yep. Just finished that one. I think it's now available on bmc.com.
And I'll include a link in the show notes so people can watch that and get some more information when they're done here. So it seems like forever now we've been hearing that workloads are being migrated off the mainframe and that it's a dying platform. What's the reality of that situation?
That's right. Always the talk of the dinosaur. So we've been hearing this conversation for the past 15 years, maybe even more. But what we're actually seeing is exciting. It's actually just the opposite. There's we call it modernization, but it's really a rejuvenation of the mainframe. Matt, you're familiar, and I hope a lot of the listeners are familiar with our mainframe survey that we've been doing for 18 years, I think, actually.
Yeah.
But what we saw this year was that the positive perception of the mainframe is at 94%. That's fantastic. Wow. It's not just the legacy platform. It's people that are actually seeing that it's going to grow and attract new workloads. And when we track it in the survey, you can have a positive perception if it's just legacy or if it's growing. But what we're seeing that's so exciting is the number of people that see it growing is actually double the number of people that see it as a legacy. So it's a up and coming platform, if you want to even say that.
Right. And there's also a younger workforce moving into the mainframe, right?
Yeah, and it seems to go together. And our survey, it breaks down the mainframe users into maximizers and minimizers, and it kind of goes along with that legacy versus growth. Are you investing in this, or are you just kind of holding on to what you have? And those people that are investing, what they have is they've solved their workforce issue. 80% of their workforce has less than 10 years experience. They're young faces, new ideas, innovative ideas, with things they want to do on the mainframe. Whereas the minimizers still have the people with 20 plus years experience that are just kind of keeping things running. That young workforce is ready to do things on the mainframe, and that's exciting for us.
Yeah, that was one of the things that really stood out to me was the positive perception amongst the less experienced people that, it shows a bright future.
It's a little sad for me because, I kind of started my career in the mainframe, and I'd always walk into a room as the young kid. And now I'm not young in a room anymore. There's young kids in there doing things on it that are exciting.
So the workloads are growing and probably will continue to grow. I assume this means that data on the platform is growing as well.
It is. And we've seen that even when all this talk of it dying was going on for the last decade, we just kept seeing data growing. And it's still growing like crazy. We're seeing higher data volumes than we've ever seen before. Higher transaction rates, the number of databases that people are trying to manage are growing. And that's really what leads to this need to modernize. They've got to do something different than what they were doing 20 years ago. I mean, it doesn't even look like it did 5 years ago. They can't keep old practices in that they were doing 20 years ago.
Right. And how are they modernizing, or how can you modernize?
When we say modernizing, what we really mean is they're focusing on application development. It's those new workloads coming to the platform. And so what they've got to do to modernize is make the platform appealing and accessible to this new generation of workers that don't have 20 years of experience. In fact, some of the app dev people may have never used a mainframe at all, but they've got to make the data accessible and keep up with the changes that the app dev team needs to provide the kind of applications they need to run their business. Overall, it's this, we call it a shift left. It's a shift left of everything that you're doing over to the applications. And then that brings problems of its own in. Now you've got security concerns. You got to be able to uphold best practices. You're trying to automate all these processes to let more users in. And it's really what we call it's DevOps on the mainframe. But at the same time, they've got to be concerned with security, stability, availability, and performance while everything is growing and going faster.
Right. And you're only as fast as your slowest process. So leaving out something like security or leaving something else out of the process kind of slows the entire thing down. You need to move everything, shift everything left.
Yeah, and you're right. It's processes. You nailed it there. That they've got to have processes in place. It's not just getting tasks done. It's now having automatable processes in place for everything you do.
So we've talked about the modernization and DevOps in the mainframe. In your webinar, you talk about data ops. What is that and how does it play here?
That's what our webinar is on, is this data ops, but it is about these processes we're talking about. So I'm product manager for data management. It's the what some would call the traditional doing reorgs, doing change data management, just dealing with the data. When we're talking about data ops, we in the webinar we give the Gartner definition that it's a mouthful, but a collaborative data management practice focused on improving communication, integration, and automation of data flows between data managers and data consumers. That's a lot.
Right.
But what that means, though, it's really just a fancy way of saying that these data management processes have to bring the data managers, who are the DBAs, and the data consumers, who are the application developers. It's got to bring them together. And so when you hear data ops, a lot of the time what people are referring to is extracting the data and moving it for analytics. But we're using it in a much broader and I think even a more important sense or form is, are you ensuring that your data is accessible to applications and end users, and which are basically your customers, all the time with the best possible performance at the lowest possible cost? It's opening up your data to your customers.
How does that differ from the traditional way of doing data management and why is it preferable?
Well, I mentioned task oriented. Data management historically in DB2 has been task oriented, very much so. So I've got a set of objects, I've got databases, table spaces, all these things out there holding my data, and I've got to back them up. I've got to, recover them in some cases. I've got to change some of their structures. I've got to do reorganizations of them, unload data, load data, all these different tasks that have to get done. And it is very heads down in the data, focused on your little silo, without any regards to how is this data being used or what am I even really doing this for. A lot of the focus, I always joke about this, when you talk to an application developer and you say, how much do you want to change the database? It's constantly, and I want to change everything. I need it new all the time. With the DBA looking at traditional data management, they don't want any changes. They want to just focus on their databases, focus on their object, keep their head down, and just get these tasks done. Data ops is the modernization of that. We've got to open that process up and shift left and take our focus off and move it over to the application.
In the webinar, you lay out a series of steps in detail, and I'll include a link
Great.
on how to transform these traditional methods to modern data ops. Can you tell me what those steps are?
Yeah, and this is a process. It's a cultural change. A lot is one thing we're seeing with our customers. It's those maximizers who are willing to innovate, and they are looking to not only just change their processes, but change their culture. And that's what that data ops is, bringing the two different groups or the multiple groups in your environment together to work together all the time, building communication and working from one end of the environment or one end of the enterprise to the other. And to me, when I've laid out these steps in the webinar, we focused on what's most important to developers. And so what should you do first? Step one is your change management. Application developers demand changes to the structure. They need new columns. They need a new database. They need some new information that their customers need to get to. Traditionally, that's very hard to do on the mainframe. And we've got great tools that do that at BMC. But now, with the shift left, the first step is now you got to open up that process to the developers. You got to let them be in control of what changes they can make. Now, right now, if any DBA hears me saying that, they're panicking and saying, not on my watch. So it's got to be done in a very controlled environment, and that's what we call DevOps for DB2. You got to give them some process that follows best practices, that keep you in control, that gives you availability and stability, but can speed up the process of letting them change what they need to change and giving you the ability to approve changes when you need to, make sure that they're done the right way, but streamline that from end to end so that applications just keep moving. So that's step one, and that's very important. That's something that our customers have been doing for a few years. It was something that we saw was needed, and it took a while to get going. But we're excited to see more and more customers really bringing DevOps on the mainframe, and our surveys all show that how it's really exploding. The next question though was, once I've got that done, I'm speeding up my applications, our applications development to production. How do I stop bad SQL from getting into production? How do I stop my database from screeching to a halt, basically? And so this is a lot the same. I've taken my change management, I've tied it into my CI/CD pipeline. Now applications are flowing through a lot faster, but how do I make sure quality stays good? So step two then is what we call SQL assurance. And from that, we mean taking all of those processes that are typically very reactive. It's, wait until there's bad performance and then step in with tools and try and fix things. We need to be proactive in a modern data ops environment. So I need to take all those processes I use to verify good SQL performance, and I need to tie those into my CI/CD pipeline too, so that as developers are writing code, all that SQL is being tested based on my production environment right away back in test. I know right when they write it that this is not going to work in production. I know it's meeting I know if it's meeting my standards or not. I know what it's going to do for performance. And if it needs to be fixed, the developer can fix it right away. And again, it speeds up the process, but now you're assuring quality of SQL the entire way as well. So now we've got step two done. We're allowing them to make changes. We're also letting them test their SQL before it gets moved, so we know we're making good changes very quickly. We're letting good SQL come through very quickly. But now what a lot of people miss is the backbone of performance in DB2 is data optimization. So what I mean by that is your data has to be in the order that DB2 needs it. DB2 is a fantastic transactional database if your data is in order. This is where we're getting into what can be a boring topic of doing reorganizations, reorgs. This is the main crux of traditional data management. When I talk to customers about how they're doing reorgs, we do them on Saturdays, we do them Saturday and Sunday maybe. Sometimes we're smart enough to spread it out over the week. And if they really think they're cutting edge, then we're using database statistics to determine what needs to be reorged. And that's good. That's a good step. And our products are fantastic at that. But we're thinking shifting left again. We're thinking about applications. When I ask them, how do your reorgs impact your applications? We don't know. We don't know how to measure that. We just know that we've got a checklist that we got to get done. With our data ops process, what we're looking at here is now step three is we need to be optimizing the data, not just to say we did it, but to make the applications run faster. So we want our reorg tool to talk to our application performance tool. We want the application performance tool to tell us, I need reorgs done to keep my applications running fast. Something is starting to slow down, I need it fixed right away. The reorg tool then needs to talk back to the application performance tool and say, I did a reorg, did it matter? And so now measuring how effective were my reorgs. And based on that, now I can change criteria. And I know that I'm not just reorganizing to check a box. I've shifted left, and now I'm focused on keeping my data optimized for my end users. That's a big step, and that's where we're seeing our customers are finally getting to right now. And we're working with them to tie those processes together, to tie that technology together. And really, that's where they're now seeing applications run better than ever before.
I think I already know the answer, and that's why I'm asking. And I think we've talked about this in the past, that maybe a DBA might look at that, and people in general hear automation and kind of go, ugh. Will this decrease the need for DBAs, or will it increase their workload, or how will it affect their day-to-day tasks?
Yeah, that's a great question. I got to tell you, so I've been preaching automation for decades now, and it's getting more and more exciting with what we can do. And that's always the first question is, well, wait a minute, are you replacing me?
Right.
And absolutely not. The DBA's job, and first of all, DBAs need to be applauded with what they're expected to do and what they're given to do it. It's a monumental task that it's amazing how well they manage their environments the way they do. It's incredible. What this is finally allowing them to get control. DBAs are definitely going to be needed, absolutely more than ever, but now they can be proactive instead of constantly what we call fighting fires.
Right.
So their job is actually going to be more effective as they do it. And that's a wonderful thing to see.
And even that's a shift left. I mean, you're shifting way to the left where you're fixing something before it happens.
It is. And it's really, you're right. The DBAs are now part of the application development team. They're helping the application developers get new applications out the door. They're not just by themselves off with the data that they're not sure what it does. So it's an exciting thing to see. And I love that you say, you're seeing things before they happen. That's the next step in our process here is now we've got this, even our data optimization tied into our application teams. But now we're looking at taking this automation even further with AI. And so we can infuse these processes with AI, and it's something we're working on right now to where don't wait until you're already seeing applications slow down. Fix it before it starts to slow down. So I can see that based on what, all the history we've got, everything going on in your environment, if we don't, let's say, get a reorg done right now, your application is going to slow down in 10 minutes. Or if I don't get a copy done right now, you're going to be unrecoverable tomorrow. So all these different ways of using AI to inform our processes, understanding your system at a very deep level, and helping you be even more than proactive. You are in reality solving problems before they actually happen. And then that leads to what I think is the most exciting step that we've been talking about forever wanting to do is at some point we can then use that AI to make it autonomic data management, which really means you don't have to worry about running reorgs. You don't have to worry about running backups because you set up your system so well and you have it managed so well. They'll get done when they need to in the background without everybody even knowing they're happening. And your system is just always running at peak performance because you're monitoring the best practices. You know what your company is trying to accomplish with it. And all of these AI infused automation is taking care of it based on the way you've told it to do it. And that's a real exciting thing. And really the future, as data is getting bigger and applications are getting bigger, it's the only way that's going to be able to manage this growing volumes of data.
In the webinar, you talk about some foundational pillars like resilience, observability. Can you explain those a little bit?
Yeah, so all this stuff I'm talking about, this innovation is exciting and it's wonderful, but I don't care how optimized your system is. If you lose customer data, none of it matters anymore. We're talking about so much automation that you also have to see what's going on. So that's what resiliency and observability are. You've got to be able to know in advance that you're recoverable from cyber attacks. You're recoverable from user errors or bad programs. You're constantly in compliance with new government or legal regulations, that you can simulate those and estimate those and know how long is it going to take me to get back, and does this meet my company needs? Does it meet the goals and the rules and the laws? And at the same time, this observability is, are you able to see what's actually going on in your environment? You've got application teams making changes through DevOps. You've got new SQL coming across. You've got data optimization based on your applications. What's actually happening in my system? And what's exciting is we have tied all of these processes into the BMC product called Z Advisor, which has a huge usage for machine learning and fixing your processes and all this kind of stuff. But we use it for their dashboarding and to give you direct insights into what are my users doing on my system. And that's a real exciting thing to see.
And going all the way back to data optimization, as you spoke about everything, I was thinking about Z Advisor and how it could help in these areas by giving you more information, by showing you what's going on.
It is. And, the main thing is not just throwing data at you, but giving you actionable information. If an application developer who doesn't have all of your experience comes to you and says, I can't get my unloads to work, or I can't, I'm trying to make this change and I can't do it. Are you going to go dig through the system to see what jobs was he doing? What was he trying to do when he can't even explain it to you? Or you can use the advisor and what we've set up to very quickly click on him as a user, click on the job that he ran and see the error code and say, you know what, your syntax was wrong. I've got you fixed and you're off running again. So it's an incredible way of taking massive amounts of data and turning it into very actionable information so that you can solve problems very quickly.
That's great.
And really see the health of your system, which is great.
Yeah. Well, I see we're just about out of time. John, thanks for being here, giving a great overview of everything.
This is exciting stuff. I'm excited about where we're going and seeing the new innovation from companies on the mainframe. It's a fun space to be in now.
It is. As I said, I'll include a link to the webinar in the show notes, the mainframe survey, so people can get more information and learn more, and links to some of the products. As always, thank you to everyone listening. Again, you can check the show notes for those links. And until next time, take care.
You're listening to The Modern Mainframe, BMC's intelligent C optimization and transformation podcast, covering the latest trends and issues in the mainframe and how BMC AMI solutions can help you make change your competitive advantage.